Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Okay. All right. So, where are we? Let's see. Where are we? That's a good question. So, we've just finished probably, we spent the last, I don't know, 4 classes, 5 classes on a kind of light biography of Jason Kappa and why his, like, where he got his understanding of emptiness, how he, how he looked to his teacher, how he looked to his own personal Buddha, his Manjushri, and then how he had these incredible experiences to help him have those deep realizations that he had, right? And so we went through a whole long, beautiful story. I'm not going to review it today. Sorry, you can go back. Um, but the main gist of it is that Pabonka Rinpoche is saying, I didn't I didn't create this. I am just repeating to you what somebody else has said. And then I'm establishing why that person's authority or why that person's understanding, in his opinion, is the best understanding. Right. And that's what we're appealing to. And that's one of the, I would say, the key distinguishing factors or attributes, or if you're a marketing person, unique selling point of our worldview organizations. We don't make things up. We tell you where we grabbed it from. We tell you what the lineage is. We give you that background so you can know that we're not making it up. And I think there's something very powerful to lineage and very powerful to knowing that, as far as we know and the best that we can, is that we're passing it down authentically and correctly. And emptiness is probably one of the hardest things for us to teach. And because it's the beyond all words and conceptions, beyond all words and thoughts. It's an experience that you can't put words and thoughts to, because those words and thoughts are not it. So they're only approximations, they're only guideposts, they're only directions on how to get there. But the experience itself is beyond that, right? So even someone who has experienced it probably has a difficult time expressing it. Even the Buddha, after having become enlightened, didn't teach right away, because he said, look, I don't think anyone's going to understand this. And then, you know, that was just a play, of course. But Pabonka is establishing Jason Kappa's authority to say, look, this guy did it. He wrote all of these cool books. They're difficult to understand. And the more we spend with it, the more we will get out of it, right? Bit by bit. So if you don't understand emptiness, it's okay. Relax. You know, Understanding is a path to having the direct experience. So we just moved out of this introduction, and now we're going to get started on the actual description of emptiness. Yay. How exciting is that? All right. So we start with a quote. How about, oh, my hair's sticking up. Why didn't anyone tell me? All right. Let's see here. First person in the screen who is not interpreting is tech host WVP Irina. Would you like to read these first couple lines? No, no, okay. I forgive you, but being a tech host does not exclude you from being a class participant. You're just helping. But I'll give you one pass. Next picture is Anastasia. Let's start with the here and then read the verse as well.
Shigapale, Sönamin, Sönamin padam por do, pardo dani dokpadam, tamar tashi kun dopa, kangi shede kepain.
Nice. I think you're studying with some Tibetan speakers. You're starting to sound very native. I'm not jealous. All right. All right. So Shigepale from the Shigepa, the 400 verses. Sunaminpa. The first thing we need to do, Dangpur, is we can say refute, overcome, triumph, destroy the belief, all different words for Dok here. Firstly, we need to refute all that is not virtuous. Okay, double negative. We need to overcome all that is not virtuous. Then pardu. We need to overcome the self. Not too big of a deal. All right. And then finally, we need to overcome dokpa tashikun. So basically the view of all things, meaning the belief in all objects. And then whomever understands this, kangishe de, wise they are. Kepayin. Okay. So in the 400 verses, Pabonka is saying, okay, this is the direction of understanding emptiness. The first thing you need to teach is sunam, virtue. Okay. So the first thing we have to overcome to be able to understand emptiness, or the first thing we need to collect is virtue, collect a tremendous amount of good karma. And if you're here in this class, you've already done it. And Natalia's like, no, I haven't. It doesn't mean you don't do bad things. It doesn't mean you still don't have things to work on. But you've collected enough karma to be here to hear emptiness. So the first thing is to give up bad deeds, right? The second thing to do is what we're going to be exploring is the emptiness of the self. We look at the lack of self-nature to the self, the lack of self-nature to the self, to persons, the lack of self-nature to people. And then we look at the self-nature of all things. We refute and give up the self-nature of that as well. All right. And that's what makes one wise, according to the 500 verses. All right. Since you have food in your mouth, Marina, Mike, can you read the next line? I watch everything you all do.
Yes. Where are we at? Shepa?
That's right. Yes.
Shepa Tarlin Dre Mekpar Tawe Tawa Soke. Uh, is that boo or woo?
So, Kebu.
Oh, Kebu. Kebu. Chung Tringi Kapsul Dok.
Right. Excellent. What's a Kebu?
Someone who hasn't seen emptiness?
Right. Just a normal person. Yes. Right. Okay. All right. So this just as an explanation. So, like in those verses, the first thing we need to dok is the incorrect views, such as le drebume, meaning that karma and emptiness do not exist. Karma and its consequences don't exist. So the first thing we have to give up, right? Basically, it's LAMRIM, okay? Not give up LAMRIM, but the steps on the path are the things that we have to begin to incorporate and give up. So he's kind of glossing this idea of, so this first line up here is sunamin, give up everything that's non-virtuous. Pabonka is saying, well, what it means is, for example, le ledre mepa, like not believing that there's karma and its consequences, karma and its results, right? Etc. What is the etc.? And these fit into the steps of Chungdringi Kub. Does anyone know what those are? This is an abbreviation. It's a LAMRIM term. So in the LAMRIM, there's three scopes or three types of teachings. There's for different capacities of people, cable. Okay. Cables of lower capacity, chung, and cables of medium capacity. Right. So there's lower capacity students and medium capacity, and the higher scope are bodhisattvas. I'm looking at different translations of this because I feel like it sounds a little, I don't know, disrespectful, maybe. Because the different teachings are for different capacities of students. What are you ready for? Right. And, karma and its consequences is taught in the lower scopes, not in the higher scope. Because the higher scope is assumed that the lower scope practices are already engaged or already there. So they call it the path that is shared. Right. So these two the lower chung and then the medium tring, we need to first go through the LAMRIM before we can understand emptiness. Oh shit, we haven't gone through the LAMRIM yet, have we? We're now in the emptiness chapter, and Pabonka is saying, oh, look, you actually need to know all those other things before you can study emptiness. Don't worry, we'll get there. And I actually don't think it's a problem to study emptiness when you haven't got all the LAMRIM involved yet. But he's saying to have I think what he's saying is to have the realizations, is the steps on the path are necessary. Right. So I'm playing with the translation. I'm going to run it by Geshe Michael. But instead of calling these, because it really is the people of lower capacities, right? I kind of want to translate it a little bit nicer and say like Chung as like beginning level and Tring is like intermediate, right? When you go to yoga, you go to a beginner's class first. and then you go to an intermediate class, and then you go to the advanced class, right? And you can't do the advanced things until you learn how to do the basic things like down dog, right? If you don't know how to do your down dogs, you can't do a lot of other poses, right? So I'm flirting with this translation. I'm going to run it by Geshe Michael because I think it might actually help people a little bit more to call it levels. Like the topic of karma and consequences, amongst other topics, can be found in the beginning and intermediate levels on steps in the path, which I think helps our mind. It helps my mind go, oh, if I go to the advanced level, but I don't understand karma and its consequences, the advanced level is not going to make sense. That's going to be my argument for a modern audience. It's still the same. It's still the same thing, but I just flirting with that translation right now. And the thing is, I don't like in the chat, someone had said lower motivation. There is a lower motivation to the person on the beginning level and the medium levels, right? The motivation is more directed towards the self. But I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable to use that language because I think it can turn people off. This is just me as a teacher. I don't know if, maybe there's something in there that I don't know. And maybe that's the reason why the language is that way. And I'm not changing the language. I'm just expressing my reservations of if you tell someone, oh, that's a lower motivation. I don't know. It feels weird to me. Like studying karma and emptiness feels like a pretty damn high motivation to me. Like someone who wants to understand how their world works and understand cause and effect feels pretty advanced to me. Where I don't think a lot of people even want to think that way. So that's just opinion of Tim. That's not what the text actually says. Okay, next line. And maybe the text does say that. All right. Next picture. Let's see here. Let's go back. Mike read. Marina, is your mouth still full or are you able to read now?
Takto and Taki
Pardu.
Parto
Mm-hmm.
and Saki Taktan Samarchoki Dak Dog. Yeah. Es Korim Nam Lendu Kier Ve Nam Gak Tan
Man
Ton
Nak.
Nak
Mm-hmm.
Tan Ton Par Dot Pa In.
Sepayan.
Yes, that Pa In.
All right. So okay. So after that, Pardu. Okay. After you've dealt with the beginning and intermediate levels of the LAMRIM, which we will spend lots of time on, don't worry. So Mennak are private advices. So the private oral instruction. So aligned with, so in accordance with all the private advices. And probably what Pabonka is saying here is these are the advices that I received as well from my teacher, right? Teacher said that. What do we should do? After we do the lower scopes of the LAMRIM, first, afterwards, we should Kang Saki Duck. Okay. And here's the verb down here. Doka. Okay. Dokupa. All right. We must overcome kansikidak, the lack of self nature to the person's tongue, and afterwards, tamar, lack of self to things. So there's a translation thing here that we're going to go to. So he says chukidak. Let's go back up here. Can we get all of this on the screen? I think we can. Okay. Nope. Sorry, I'm trying to highlight both things here. Okay. All right. Screw that. We're going to do this like this. So you can see both. All right. Okay, so this is why it's very helpful when you're a translator to not translate the verses until you read the commentary. Because tashikung, what do those words mean literally? Right?
All the views?
What's that?
All the views?
It can mean all the views. Ta can mean view, right? Shik is one, right? Or both or all. Like, and then you have kung, which means all. So like, what the heck does overcome all one view, right? Like taken together, it's not quite clear what it means, right? So that's why we need to go to the commentary to understand that it's actually talking about the emptiness of things, the lack of self to things. Okay. Because that just means all, like, all views, right? All, like, everything else pretty much, right? But like, what the heck does that mean? So that's why we have to oftentimes, because I was looking at it and I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I'm searching through everything and I couldn't find it. I was like, oh, wait, go to the commentary first, Tim, and then go backwards. All right. So that's why we do that, because Pavoka is really clear. Ch, the lack of self to things, all existing things, right? All existing things in the universe, right? All right. So what else does it say there? Let me make this smaller so I can see it on my whole screen. Right. So basically, in alignment with my Mennak, alignment with what we should do in our practice, step by step, gradually. What should we do in our practice? What is the order of our practices? Okay. According to the private advices and according to this other text, first we need to do the LAMRIM, lower and middle scopes, beginning intermediate levels. Then we look at the emptiness of the lack of self nature to the person, and then the lack of self nature to things. All right. We don't need to hammer that any longer. We now know the order. And I don't understand the order. And because we normally teach the pen first, which is the emptiness of things. Right? So there's something here that is interesting to consider, why the emptiness of self is presented first versus the emptiness of all existing things. Even though you do see the emptiness of self first, the emptiness of you is the first direct experience of emptiness. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. Let's keep investigating. Natalia. You're next.
Dark mat, ni poi mat, gi dark la, kyat mat, kyan, kyat, shin kan, sa gi, ten gi, dark mat de, gela, we dan, porde, ne, rit,
Nay,
rit,
tree. Tree. It's
rit,
more. It's almost like a. Sounds like a tree. Like a. Yeah. Nay tree. Okay. So of the two emptiness of the two lack of self natures, dakme nipo, of the two, meaning that the lack of self-existence to thing, to people, and to things. Of those two, it is in fact the case that that self, the self which is not there, Megyu, all right. We learned this in, does anyone remember where we learned this phrase recently? For those of you mixed nut people. I think Emily's.
Was this in Xiaoping's text about the results or the sprouts or something?
No, it may have been, but it was from Gibson's text last week. Because it doesn't mean not a cause. Like it doesn't mean make you as in cause. It means something which is not there. Okay. So the self which is not there, related to both types of selflessness, meaning the emptiness of the things and the emptiness to people. The lack of that self is the same between those two. Okay. So it's kind of hard to understand here. So both of the emptiness of those, the lack of self is actually the same thing, right? Kim May means there is no difference, or they are the same. So the lack of self-existence to a person, or the lack of self-existence to existing things that are not people, is the same lack of self-existence. Okay. So we have to understand that even though we're making these categories between the two, they're actually, the emptiness of it's the same. There's no difference. Okay. Even though we're making those categories. And then he goes on to say, but Kyung, but Tim has to look up a word because he forgot what it means. When we're thinking about this, all right, and he's using this word keishi, the foundation, all right? The foundation of kansaki tengi dakme. So meaning when we're considering of the two and we're putting in the one that is the lack of self nature to the persons, we're going to put that a little bit on top of it. Okay. Meaning we're going to give a priority to this one. Why? Because it's just a little bit easier to understand. Okay. Ne lawa. It's just a little bit easier to understand. And for that reason, it, dangporte ne, it gets taught first. The instructions are taught first to go after the lack of self nature to persons. Because according to Pabonka Rinpoche, it's a little bit easier. So does the 400 verses. So does Jason Kappa. Still doesn't prove my point about why we teach the pen first. But let's keep going. All right, who's next here, picture-wise? Chio, are you translating? You are, okay. Then you're not going to read. How about Emily?
Yang Tony Tangla J Che
Che.
Kiripala Ten Che Kirimpatang Nanda Giripak Sok Mang Yang.
Okay, excellent. And then furthermore, Taeyang, the ways that we establish emptiness, Tenla Bepche, the way we establish emptiness. There's several ways that we do this. In fact, there are many ways. All right. There's several ways we do that. One way is Tendrelki Rick, the reasoning of dependent origination, the reasoning of dependence. Another one is called Namnungi Rikpa, the reasoning, the 7-part reasoning. And there are many others. Those of us who are studying emptiness want proofs of emptiness. And so there are many, many reasonings and ways to establish emptiness. And then Pamolka goes on to talk about the lack of self-nature to the person. However, because we're mixed nuts, because we're translators, I want to know what the heck is the reasoning on dependence, and then the reasoning, the 7-part reasoning. I want to know what they are. So I went and found it. And lucky for us, the 7-part reasoning, which actually appears in Nagarjuna's wisdom, also appears in a text called Emptiness Meditations. One of my favorite translations. It's our bestseller. All right. It's the bestseller from the Diamond Cutter Press. By bestseller, I don't know what that means in the entire world, but many people have purchased this one. And so there's a whole section on the 7-part reasoning to establish emptiness. So I went and grabbed it for us, and we're going to translate it, and we're going to understand it. If you can understand these 7, you can understand how to establish emptiness. And if you can understand these 7, maybe we can understand what Pabonka is going to be talking about in the next, 10 folios. All right. So here we go. I thought about just including this verse, which gives us the 7, but we're going to learn all 7 and explain all of them. So this is going to take us to the end of the term and take us into the next term as well. So stick with it. It'll be fun. I don't know. I'll find it fun anyway. Anna, could you read these next 2?
Hi, thank you. Ni pani yukpala.
Jukpale.
Yukpale. More?
Yep. We're going to read the next line too. All of these here.
Shinta yan yan la shan domin shan min ma yin de dan yan min shin yan lak la min yan lak dak den min dupatam min Bip,
Yep.
bip, min, yi, shin, no.
Nice. Good job. Nice.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So this is from entering the middle way, jukbale. And this is the second part from above. It doesn't matter what it was. But from entering the middle way, here we go. Let's see what it has to say. Shingta. A shingta is like a wagon. All right. We could call it a car or a cart. What's a shinta sulje? It's a famous word used in the, I don't know, in the first 2 years of my translation of the Abhisamaya Alankar. Shintan Solje. Examples of a Shintan Solje would be Master Asanga, would be Arya Nagarjuna. Oh, boo. Okay. It's an innovator, someone who innovates a scriptural tradition. Oh, nice, Laura. They're people who take the texts, the explanations of the Buddha, and clarify their presentation. So those are the two. But actually, in this case, we're talking about. So there's a Shinta and Sonje, and there's a Shinta Sin something. Hold on, I need to look it up. Shinta Sin Sonje. Okay, I think it's Sinpa. Like there's an innovator, the person who invents the wagon, and then the person who drives the wagon or something like that. Like someone who's a lineage holder is someone who holds art, and then the one who invents it or something like, I can't remember how it all goes. But someone we call them innovators and marketers. Innovators create the new thing, and then the marketers market it. Right. And there's nothing wrong with being a marketer. You need to be a marketer before you can invent things anyway. All right. So anyhow, so we have this wagon, right? We don't say that the wagon is other than its parts. Okay. Nor do we say that it's not. So the first one is the thing is not other than its parts, nor do we say that it's not other than its parts. We're going to explain these, don't worry. We don't say that it's possessed of those parts. Or that it's not its parts. We don't say that the parts are not the wagon. All right. Nor is it a simple collection. Nor is it its outline. Those are the 7. Okay. Let me just make sure I got the 7 right, because I should have written it down. Yes. Okay. Here's the first one. We don't say that it's not other than its parts, nor do we say it's not. So, shenmin mayin, double negative. We don't say it's not. We don't say that it's possessed by its parts. And we don't say that the parts are not the wagon itself. Wait. Wait, I messed it up. Hold on. I messed up the line here. Da, 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 da. Here's the first one. Something that's other than its parts. Nor do we say that it's not that. That's 2. Let's just put little numbers here. 1, 2, 3. The third one, it says we don't even say that it's possessed of those parts. Nor that it's not its parts. That's 4. Wait, 1. I'm sorry. This is fun here for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I messed it up. Here we go. So third one is it's not possessed of the parts. Nor is it not the parts. Or that the parts are not the wagon. That's it. It's not a simple collection, and it's not its outline. There they are. Okay. Now we're going to figure out what the hell that means. And this is why we could just do this and create a small footnote and move on. But I think this would actually turn out to be a really wonderful appendix to the translation. Because if you can understand what all 7 of these mean, and there might even need to be a little essay attached to it. Maybe one of you can write that essay. Then we will, then there's a way to understand how is it that something becomes something when it's not its parts, or when we say it is its parts, right? Because any way you analyze it in these 7 ways, you're not going to find the thing that you think you're finding. And that's the whole thing about emptiness. Something is there you think something is there that's not there. And so all of these analyses are about breaking down what you thought was there that isn't. And that's why we want to have all the different kinds of proofs to be able to play with. So that you can you can coerce gently with love your mind into stopping to holding on to the self-existence of things, including the self-existence of the self, which is what we were talking about in ACI 14 about the self-cherishing. And there might be something linked in here to self-cherishing if you look closely enough. All right, 324. Kimchi.
Dạ, dạ. Sê sinh tá nam đun kỳ rích bê theo nam mi nhân ba tả. Đắc dạng thế thẳng bê thuần cha nề sung ba sinh chớ nạ.
Good reading.
Yeah.
So this she here indicates the end of the quote. That's the quote marker. So if we go searching, okay, if we go looking for, searching, through the 7-step reasoning, and we go looking for that wagon, that shinta, right? If you go looking for that through the 7-part reasoning, mine, you will not find it. So we're going to go through. We're then going to describe the self, the duck, as the metaphor, okay, the paden, so we can understand how to use this 7-part reasoning. There's actually several applications of it in this text. So I'm choosing the one that relates to the self. Why? Because we're talking about the emptiness of the self as it relates to people. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's go to 325. Sarah, could you read that one?
Yes, thank you. Sinta derang yang le namdang rang shin gichig dang ta dat sok dun pogang duyang madrupte.
Nice, nice. So this wagon does not exist, all right, in any of these 7 different ways. Okay. It's not one with its parts, and it's not separate from its parts. These two right here. Rangi Yenlak Nam, it's not one with its parts, and it's not separate from its parts. Okay. And we're going to explain why in just a second. So let's move on. 326. Let's move this down here. All right. Natalia Safilina.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
I don't know how to read at all. I can just pronounce some.
Just make noises.
Shin, ta, cho, kan,
Chen.
chen, ran, chi, ji, ran, chi,
Mm-hmm.
yang, la, nam, dang, ran, shin, gi, gi,
Mm-hmm.
Chikminte, Yinna, Yanla, Namduma, Yinpa, Shindu, Chot, Kyangduma, Talbatang.
All right. For someone who said they couldn't read, I don't know. I think you're a little suspicious.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
So the rest of this text is it's actually in debate format. So this is gonna be fun. So here we go. Shinta Chen. Let's consider a wagon. Let's take a wagon. It is not through some nature of its own. Okay. One with its parts. Rangi Yemak Nam Chik. Okay. Meaning a wagon is not one with its parts. Why? Yinna, if that were the case, if it were the case that the wagon is one with its parts, there would have to be more than one wagon there because there's more than one parts. Let's say it again. Consider a car. Let's just call them a car right now. It is not through some nature of its own one with its parts. Why? Because there would have to be more than one car, because there are more than one parts to the car, since the parts are more than one. Okay. How many parts are there in a car? You have the steering wheel, you have the window, you have the tires, you have the oil, you have all the things that break and have to be fixed, right? So this is the idea of Chiktudro, right? One or many. And you have to think about it. like if it was one with its parts, if the car was one, meaning the same as its parts, each of the individual parts would be a car. That's what that's saying. Like if you're saying that there's something self-existent about the car, then all the parts would have to be car. And so then the wheel would be the car. And so then there would be 5,000 cars because there's 5,000 parts, not just one car. So you have to think about that one a little bit. Like how, if something is one with its parts, then all the parts are the car. Then when you pull the part off, the part is the car. And we're talking about identity. You have to think about it in terms of identity. All right, moving on. It gets clear, maybe. All right, 327. How about Hien? Could you read 327?
Chén đá chó chiếc chín ba tế chín chữ yên lệ ném tráng chiếc chữ kiều tế phí trọc.
Nice. Nice reading. Okay, we can say this another way. Okay, we can say this another way. If the car is one with its parts, kachikyenpa, all right? Then all the parts would be only one thing. All right? Because the wagon is only one thing. Okay? Kachikyenpa de, right? Because the wagon is one thing, then the parts would only be one thing, which doesn't make any sense, right? If all the parts were one thing, then you would have a wagon, but then you wouldn't have parts. You wouldn't have a left and a right and a top and a bottom and a steering wheel and gasoline. It would all just be one thing, car. If the car is one thing, then all the parts have to be one thing, right? Everyone's like, this leads you to understand emptiness because there's something wrong with the way that you think. All right. When you look at a car, you look at the car, right? You're looking at the car. You're not looking at it. Well, nominally speaking, right? Normal experience is you look at the car and it's a car, right? You don't think about the parts. When you think about the parts, you go, oh, that's parts of a car. But if all of those parts were car, then there would be many cars. Or alternatively, all parts would be one thing. There would just be one part. And it makes no sense to say one part. A part is a separation of things. One part is a whole, which is how you take a car anyway. It's how you take it, right? You take it as a whole thing. But there's something fishy going on in your own mind. Literally, this one little line, Shinta Chuchen, okay? You could do hours of meditation just on this. Wow, doesn't that sound like effing exciting? I'm going to meditate on on the parts of a car. Yes. Do the parts of a car, parts of a wagon, right? Or the parts of the self. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is going to take some time, so just relax. Lumila, could you read this one?
chen rangi yan lak nam dan go wo drup be so wamayinte inna wumpa dan nam o shintu chot rangi yan lakle yan gar tu so sor mikopa Ledema tokwe chirro.
Nice. All right, here we go. Let's consider this again. Chen. Let's again consider the wagon. All right. It is not something, my yin, which exists through some essence of its own, which is also discrete from its parts. So I'll say it again. It is not something which exists through some nature of its own, which is separate from its parts. Okay. Why is that the case? Because if you were to look at it, if you were to look at it, tongma, I'm sorry, nope, hold on. It is not seen that way. Hold on. If it is seen, Mick, if you see it as a discrete object from its parts, okay, if you were to see it that way, you would have to see it as a separate object separated from its parts, just like a water pitcher and a piece of cloth. Okay. But you don't see it that way. Okay, let me say it again. You don't see it that way. Matonga. All right. If something has some essence of its own, and let's say it's separate from its parts, right? You have the car there, and it's separate from its parts. You would have to be able to see the object without its parts separately. Just like you would see two separate things, like a cup and a spoon. Right? The parts would have to be over here, and the car would have to be over here. All the wheels and all the steering wheels and all the windows would be over here, and then the car would be over here. Does that align with your experience? No, it doesn't. You don't see things separate from their parts. So we've just gone through two logical impossibilities. If something is one with its parts, then all the parts would have to be, either there's two consequences. Either each of the parts would have to be a car, which means there'd be 5,000 cars, or there wouldn't be any parts because all the parts would be one. So we cancel that. Second, right? Okay, we canceled that. Like it's not one with its parts. I get it. Okay, well then it must be separate from its parts. Okay. Well, if it was separate from its parts, the parts would be over here, the car would be over here. that makes no sense. Like the parts of the car are over here and there's a car on the other side, then there's like they're not separate things in that way. And I promise you, if you think through all of these and meditate on each of these, you can come to a deep understanding of emptiness. So that was 2 of the 7. Oh my God, everyone's like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? It was so much more fun when we were telling stories. Jason Gappa stories were so much more fun. But the idea here is if we can establish our foundation in emptiness, even if we don't understand it, when we go through the LAMRIM, it'll help us to better understand each of the steps, because we're going to be applying these understandings of emptiness to each of the steps of the LAMRIM. All right, that's all for today. I'm going to try to get through the other 5 for our last class on Monday of the term. And then we might get back into Pabonka. And if we don't get into it, we'll just keep going, because that's how this is going to go. Thank you, interpreters. It's going to get harder and harder. So just relax. I'll do my best to, and if you need more time, please yell at me. Put it in the chat. Tim, shut up. Give me more space. So thank you all very much. Thank you for joining. And please say goodbye to each other.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for the class.
Adiós, muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank
Дякую,
you.
дякую.
Please stay.
Bye.
Muchas gracias.
Many thanks. Have a perfect day.
Thank you.
Марія, дякую за переклад.
Thank you, 亲，谢谢翻译老师，晚安。
Buddhism.
Спасибо.